The words came so suddenly that, for a moment, I thought I had misheard them. Quit by Sunday, or find somewhere else to sleep. My mother's voice echoed through our small kitchen. The room fell silent. Even the ticking wall clock seemed louder than usual. I looked at her, waiting for the smile that would tell me she was joking. It never came. My name is Emma Collins. I was 19 years old. I had just graduated from high school 2 months earlier. Unlike many of my classmates, I wasn't heading straight to college. My parents couldn't afford tuition, and I hadn't received the scholarship I had worked so hard for. Instead of giving up, I decided to work for a year, save every dollar I could, and then apply to nursing school. It wasn't the path I had imagined, but it was an honest one. A week earlier, I had been hired at Miller's Family Diner. It wasn't glamorous. The building was old. The booths had been repaired more times than anyone could count. The coffee machine made strange noises every morning. But the people were kind. Customers greeted each other by name. Regulars always left smiling. And for the first time in my life, I was earning money through my own hard work. I loved it. Every paycheck reminded me that my dream was becoming possible. Unfortunately, my mother saw things very differently. She had spent years telling relatives that I would become a lawyer or a doctor. Whenever neighbors asked about me, she proudly described the future she had imagined. Then I became a waitress. To her, it felt like public humiliation. That Friday evening, I came home after my shift smelling like coffee and fresh bread. I had earned my first week of tips. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. "Mom," I said excitedly, pulling a folded envelope from my pocket. "Look, my first paycheck." She barely glanced at it. "How much?" $482. I smiled. "After taxes." I also made great tips. She looked at the envelope as though it contained something unpleasant. "You're excited about this?" "Of course. It's my first paycheck." She shook her head. "I didn't raise you to carry plates." The excitement disappeared from my face. "It's temporary. I'm saving for nursing school." She laughed quietly. "That's what everyone says. They work these jobs for a year. Then another. And another. Before they know it, they're 40 years old." Dad remained silent at the other end of the table. He slowly stirred his soup without looking up. I turned toward him. "Dad," he sighed softly, "I think your mother just wants more for you. I want more too. That's why I'm working." Mom interrupted. "No. People with ambition don't settle." I stared at her. "I'm not settling. I'm starting." She crossed her arms. "You should keep applying for office jobs." "I have. No one hired me." "What about college?" "I need money first. There are loans. I don't want to begin adulthood buried in debt if I can avoid it." Mom stood up. "I refuse to watch my daughter waste her future serving pancakes. It's honest work." It's embarrassing. That single sentence hurt more than I expected. Because she wasn't criticizing the job. She was criticizing everyone who depended on it. The cooks. The servers. The dishwashers. People who worked hard every day. People just like me. The next morning, I arrived at Miller's diner feeling unusually quiet. Mr. Miller noticed immediately. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Just family stuff." He didn't push. Instead, he quietly poured me a cup of hot chocolate. "I've learned something after 40 years in this business." "What's that?" "Never underestimate honest work." Those words stayed with me throughout the day. Customers came and went. An elderly couple celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. A truck driver left a generous tip after thanking me for remembering his usual breakfast order. A little girl proudly showed me the drawing she'd made while waiting for pancakes. For the first time since the argument, I smiled. When my shift ended, Mr. Miller called me into his office. "You've done excellent work this week." "Thank you. I hope you plan to stay." "I do. I really like it here." He smiled warmly. "We like having you." Walking home that evening, I felt hopeful again. Until I opened the front door. My suitcase sat beside it. Packed. Every drawer in my bedroom had been emptied. My clothes were neatly folded inside. My books were stacked beside the suitcase. Mom stood in the hallway. "I packed for you." I looked at the suitcase. Then back at her. "What is this?" "You have until Sunday. Quit the diner. Or leave." Dad stood behind her. His eyes were filled with regret. "Please. Both of you." Mom shook her head. "No. This house isn't supporting bad decisions." I quietly walked to my room, sat on the bed, and looked around the space where I had grown up. The walls still held photographs from childhood, school certificates, family vacations, birthday cards. Suddenly, none of it felt like home anymore. That night, I barely slept. I kept wondering how my first job, the beginning of my dream, had somehow become the reason I was losing my family. By Sunday morning, I had made my decision. I carefully packed the few belongings my mother hadn't already placed in the suitcase, folded my uniform, counted every dollar I had earned. Then I picked up my bags, knowing I was walking away with almost nothing except a dream, a few $100s, and the determination to prove that no honest job is ever something to be ashamed of. When I closed the front door behind me that Sunday morning, I didn't know where my life was heading. I only knew I couldn't abandon my dreams simply to meet someone else's expectations. My suitcase fit inside the trunk of my aging car. My savings amounted to exactly $532, including the $50 bill my father quietly slipped into my hand before I left. He hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you." I smiled through tears. "You still can." He looked down. "I hope one day you'll forgive us." I nodded. "I already forgive you." Then I drove away. For the first week, I stayed on my best friend Ava's couch. She refused to charge me rent. Instead, she made one rule. You keep chasing your dream. Every morning, I woke up before sunrise, worked the breakfast shift at Miller's Family Diner, stayed late whenever someone needed help, picked up extra weekend hours. Every tip went into a savings account labeled nursing school. Life wasn't easy. Some nights I ate instant noodles because they were all I could afford. Other nights I studied anatomy books borrowed from the public library until midnight. There were moments when I questioned everything. But every time doubt appeared, I remembered my grandmother's final hospital stay. I remembered the nurse who held her hand. And I kept going. Mr. Miller noticed my determination. One afternoon, after the lunch rush ended, he called me into his office. "Emma." "Yes, sir." "I've been watching you." I laughed nervously. "I hope that's a good thing." He smiled. "It is. You've never been late. You stay to help without being asked. And every customer requests your section." He opened a drawer and handed me a small key. I looked confused. "What is this?" "The assistant manager's office. I'd like you to start training." I stared at him. "I've only worked here 7 weeks." "I know. But leadership isn't measured by time. It's measured by character." My promotion came with a raise, health benefits, and something even more valuable: experience. I threw myself into learning everything I could. Inventory, scheduling, payroll, ordering supplies. Within weeks, I understood that running a restaurant involved far more than carrying plates. One evening, Mr. Miller invited me to dinner after closing. As we cleaned the last table, he quietly asked, "Have you ever heard of the Eleanor Miller Scholarship?" I shook my head. My late wife started it before she passed away. It's for hardworking employees who dream of careers in healthcare. My heart nearly stopped. I thought it had ended. So did everyone else. He smiled. Until I met someone worth restarting it for. A month later, I received the official letter. The scholarship would cover my entire nursing school tuition. I read the letter 3 times before believing it was real. I cried all the way to work. The local newspaper heard about the scholarship and published an article titled, "Young Waitress Earns Full Nursing Scholarship Through Hard Work." Soon afterward, a regional television station interviewed both Mr. Miller and me. When the story aired, my phone began ringing nonstop. Friends, former teachers, neighbors. Then, my mother. I didn't answer. The next afternoon, she walked into the diner carrying a bouquet of white lilies. The entire restaurant fell quiet. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. Nervous. She slowly approached my table. "I saw your interview." I nodded politely. "I'm glad." Tears filled her eyes. "I was wrong. I waited. I thought I was protecting you." "No. You were protecting your pride." She lowered her head. "I couldn't bear telling people my daughter was a waitress." I looked around the diner. Families laughing together. Regular customers waving. Co-workers helping each other. "Do you know what I learned here?" She shook her head. "I learned responsibility, leadership, compassion. I learned how to solve problems under pressure. I learned that every person deserves respect." I smiled gently. "And I learned that no honest job is beneath anyone." She quietly wiped away her tears. I wish I had understood sooner. Before I could answer, Mr. Miller walked over. "Emma, the scholarship committee is here." Then he smiled warmly at my mother. "You must be the proud parent." Mom couldn't speak, because she knew she hadn't earned those words. Not yet. Several months later, I started nursing school while continuing to work weekends at the diner. The long days were exhausting. Classes in the morning. Hospital training in the afternoon. Restaurant shifts on Saturdays and Sundays. But I loved every minute. For years passed faster than I expected. Graduation day finally arrived. As my name echoed through the auditorium, I searched the audience. Mr. Miller stood in the front row, clapping proudly. Beside him sat Ava, my father, and my mother. When the ceremony ended, Mom hugged me tightly. I've never been prouder. I smiled softly. I hope you're proud of every part of the journey. She nodded through tears. I am. I'm proud of the waitress, the assistant manager, the student, and the nurse. A few weeks later, I visited Miller's Diner wearing my new nursing uniform. Every employee stopped working long enough to cheer. Mr. Miller laughed. I knew you'd come back. I promised I would. I hugged him tightly. None of this would have happened without you. He smiled. You did the hard part. You just needed someone to believe in you. Looking back, people often ask me when my life truly changed. Was it the scholarship? The promotion? Graduating nursing school? None of those moments. My life changed the day I chose not to let someone else's opinion define the value of honest work. Because dreams aren't built by titles. They're built one ordinary day at a time. One shift, one paycheck, one opportunity, one act of perseverance. And sometimes, the first job people are embarrassed to mention becomes the very foundation of the future they're proudest to celebrate.